The topic of today's video is how I went from a nerd, a loser, social reject in college to most popular. Now there's a very logical explanation of why I would consider myself most popular or in that category, as I'm gonna explain later. And I think a lot of other people would agree with that as well, and you're gonna see that as I break this down for you. So essentially, I graduated from high school back in 2016. I always knew I wanted to go out of state, so I went to a very large university. Keep in mind, with this most popular thing I'm talking about, this is not like most popular in high school. This is not like most popular of a small private school or a small community college with like a couple thousand people. This is like a large public D1 school university with, you know, tens of thousands. I think we had like 40, 50,000 plus students, okay? So you're gonna kind of see how this all wraps together here if you keep watching. Now, I showed up to school at the University of Arizona, 2016, in the fall time, and I went through Rush. I went through Fraternity Rush. So for those of you who don't know, it's like a week-long process where you get to know the different fraternities for guys and obviously sororities for girls to see if you can get a bid, an invitation to one of these fraternities or sorority organizations. So you can be a part of that. You can be in Greek life. You can be part of the cool kids, right? Like, just depending on who you are, how you categorize that. A lot of schools, University of Arizona included, it was very much the in crowd. The popular thing was to be in Greek life, okay? Now, that's just gonna say that doesn't mean that like you're 100% a loser or like you're worthless if you're not in Greek life. It's not like that. But in the moment, as a lot of young kids going through college, like that is kind of how you view it, whether that's right or wrong. So anyways, make a long story short, I go through the rush process, and something very interesting and out of the ordinary and unique happened to me in this week-long process. And this week-long process is very stressful, right? Because you're basically on the brink of like, hey, am I gonna be in this in crowd or am I not? Or am I gonna get an invitation to the house that I want to be a part of or not? Like that's a big thing. It's almost like, maybe not in the same way, but it's like interviewing with different companies, and the company that you choose, depending on the culture and the pay and the X, Y, and Z, like is going to change the trajectory of your experience moving forward. So basically what happens is throughout the process, each day of Rush, typically they will start like making cuts. They'll start like cutting kids out of the process of each round, and they'll only be inviting back a specific people. The fraternities will evaluate you based on the things that you say and do when you go and visit with them, and then they'll make cuts and they'll only invite back a select few. So typically they don't really make cuts the first few days, and then they start cutting more and more and more until it ends with bid night, which is where they send an invitation to the most select few and then invite them to either be a part of it or not be a part of the fraternity. So basically what happened to me when I went through Fall Rush 2016 is on like the first day where we get like a list of the houses that we're gonna go back to, it was like well known, it was made known by my recruitment counselor, like to the whole group, that hey, like nobody really gets cut this day. This is just like, you know, we're just gonna put a list of like the houses that you can choose to go back to, right? And I look at my list, and at the time there was like 4 what would be considered top houses, okay? Which would be like the cool houses that have like the most money, maybe the most members, that have the most like rapport and kind of status with the sororities and stuff. Now I know if you're not in the Greek system, if you didn't do that experience in college, this might seem really silly to you, but I'm just gonna shoot you straight and tell you how it was. And 3 out of the 4 top houses were not on my list. And I was like, whoa, wait, like I thought cuts weren't being made this day. Like what, this is like the first day, like what the fuck's going on? And I'm like pissed off. I go to my recruitment counselor. He's like, that's really weird. Like I've never really seen that before, but I mean, it is what it is. Like you got the piece of paper. This is the system that we follow. Like you can't unfortunately go to those houses. I'm really sorry. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And so I go around to everybody in my group, and I specifically am like looking at the nerdy guys. And I'm like, the guys who I'm just like, dude, look, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but like, and I didn't say this, of course, but I'm like, I know that these guys are not gonna be a part of the top houses. Like, there's just no way. I go and I look, I'm like, show me your schedule. And they got invited back to all the top houses, like, cause they weren't supposed to make any cuts. So here I am, like, devastated. Like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't get called back to 3 out of the 4. Like, that is severely dwindling my chances. So long story short, I get dropped from the one top house that I still had on the list, and then it's kind of like 4 top houses, and there's a few houses like right below in the list of like this cheesy kind of like popularity and status game, right? So I end up getting a bid from like this house right here. It's like right below the top house. And I get to the end of it, but it's still like, it wasn't me. It just didn't feel right. And I was like this close. I was literally like, I had to leave in like 10 minutes to go to the bid night, like acceptance dinner, and say like, I'm a part of this fraternity. I'm gonna accept the bid, the invitation, like we're good to go. And I just thought to myself, and I was like, you'll get another opportunity in like 6 months, 5 or 6 months from now. I can rush in the springtime and I can try again, but it would mean that I have to go 6 months of my freshman year at school without being in a fraternity, not pledging a fraternity, not being a part of the organization, just a GED, or a goddamn independent is what it stands for, like someone who's not a part of the Greek system. And I thought about it so hard, and I was stressing over this decision. I was like, fuck, what do I do? And I was just like, man, I gotta go with my gut. And I decided not to go. So I just said, fuck it, I'm gonna bite the bullet this first 6 months. And in that environment, the University of Arizona, being the type of guy, like, it's one thing to be a G, as I call it, and you're like, I don't give a fuck about fraternities, that's not a good fit for me, I don't wanna do that, like, that's just not me. That's one thing. It's another thing to be the type of guy that wants to be in a fraternity, that knows it's a good fit, that knows that the type of guys that he's gonna vibe with and the type of girls that he's gonna wanna hang out with are like gonna be a part of that tribe, that Greek life, that social environment, right? And then not be a part of it, like that was really, really rough for me. And it was crazy because like I would meet girls and like immediately the first question would be like, oh, what house are you in? Oh, did you rush? Did you do this? Like I was actually talking to a girl who I had met before I'd even gotten to school. We had like hooked up a little bit, like nothing crazy. We didn't smash or anything, but we were like talking and like vibing and like whatever. And she was like messaging me. She was actually a year older than me, and she was in one of the top sororities. And I remember she was like asking me about like, what house did you get? Like, I'm so excited. You'd be such a good fit for this fraternity, for this, blah, blah, blah. And then like I didn't get in to any of the top houses. I was like, I'm gonna say no, and I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna rush again in 6 months. And she like stopped talking to me, stopped having any interest. Like that's how fucking serious it was. Like, so I just felt like a loser for like 6 months. I had nowhere to party. I had no bitches. I had a very limited amount of friends. Like I just had some friends who were kind of like on the out, you know, there's the in crowd and then there's like the out crowd. They're kind of on the outside of like what's cool and what's popular. So I had like a few friends kind of just in the dorms. And then thankfully I did make friends with a lot of girls who were in the dorm. So a lot of the girls who had joined sororities, I was friends with them because they were in my dorm and I was just like talkative and charismatic and I wanted to have friends that were girls, etc. And so they would hang out with me sometimes, but a lot of times it's like they would hang out with me in my dorm and then they would be like, okay, cool, now we're gonna go to the frats for a party. And then it'd be like 9 o'clock at night and I'm just like, all right, like, see ya, have fun getting fucked by all the cool frat boys while I sit here with my dick in my hand, fucking in my dorm room playing video games with my roommate on a Friday night. I was like, fucked. Like it was so unbelievably whack. It was like I wouldn't say it was like one of the worst times of my life, because like just being a freshman in college at a big party school like is fun in general. It was just crazy. Like I would have probably had way more fun in that situation if I was at a smaller school, a school where Greek life like wasn't as big of a deal, wasn't a big thing. But like it was here, and it was very much like it sucked. I felt less than. I felt like I was not as cool as all the other guys who had gotten accepted into fraternities. I felt like women didn't give me the time of day because I wasn't cool, didn't have status. So it was really rough. There was tons of Thursday was a big going out night at the University of Arizona. There's tons of Thursdays where I just sat in my dorm room. I was playing video games, or me and my roommate would get a bottle and just get fucked up and get drunk, but like we couldn't throw a party in our dorm, right? We could have maybe little like pre-games. We could have girls come back, you know, after they got back from the frats. Granted, they didn't get stolen by one of the fucking stud frat boys. And so, yeah, it was rough. It definitely was like a really humbling experience. It definitely like checked my ego hard. I came into the University of Arizona firing like, I'm so ready for this. Like, let's throw down. Let's get some status. Let's get bitches. Let's party. Like just the classic American fraternity situation. And long story short, I had a really rough 6 months at school. Like it sucked, but I was just biting the bullet because I was like, I know I'm gonna try again. It's all gonna be good. Like I gotta figure it out. And flash forward, I go through the entire spring process. And the funny thing was, on bid night, when I was getting called back, the final round of callbacks to the fraternities, guess which 3 fraternities invited me back on that night? If you guessed the exact same 3 fraternities that were mysteriously dropped off of my callback list 6 months before, you are right. It's exactly what happened. And so I think there was a couple things that contributed to that, which is that number one, I think it was just a fluke. There was some sort of human error or something in the process that went by in the first time I went through Rush that led to me not getting called back to those 3 houses on like day fucking 2 or whatever, where they didn't even make cuts. The other thing though is I think there was a big kind of cultural difference and sort of shock a little bit. Funny enough, moving from like the outside suburbs of Seattle to Arizona, like people dress different, they talk different, had different haircuts a little bit. And I just think that like the vibe that I maybe gave off coming into school originally was not that great, didn't really fit in, wasn't that cool. And after being in Arizona, being at the University of Arizona for 6 months, I had enhanced my style a little bit, had a little bit more charisma, like grew my hair out a little bit, like was just doing things. So I think I had a better presentation in general. I was way more prepared. I was a cooler individual coming into that next round of Rush. So anyways, I got into one of the top houses. It was SAE, the University of Arizona. And I ended up having a really good experience there. I dove in, I had tons of friends, I partied a lot, I was pledging, so I got hazed. I went through the full experience. Everything was good. And I had a really, really fun time. And then what happened, and this is kind of like the second piece, is like how I got to like this most popular position, which I'll kind of explain and break that down. You may or may not agree with this, but essentially being in a top house is, by the definition of that environment, that is like popularity, that is situational status, that is local star power, right? Within the frame of Greek life at a big university in America, right? So I had that, right? But then in addition to that, when you are a sophomore, I think it was like 3 or 4 top sororities and then like just 3 of the top fraternities got together, and they had this like super exclusive, like separate kind of just like drinking club, like social club drinking club. It was called Chimes. And this was like if popularity was like Greek life was popularity on like one scale, this was like taking it to another level, because now there was this other organization that was only restricted to like the top fraternities and sororities, that then held a second round of like interviews and Rush basically, and they would pick like 3 to 4 members from each organization to be a part of this like 30-person organization called Chimes, which you got to be in for your junior year. And we like kind of wore these like jerseys with our name on them, and it was like a well-known thing. So it was even more exclusive. And then sophomore year, you actually interview for that. And then all the juniors who are currently in this Chimes club then will like interview you, they'll haze you, they're very, they operate with a lot of scrutiny, right? They're very strict, they're very particular of who they let in, blah, blah, blah. And so long story short, I actually got in to Chimes, which is kind of crazy to think about that, because they only accepted 4 guys from my fraternity. Was it 3 or 4? It was 4. And so that was interesting. And then through that, experience, I got introduced to like a lot of other people. I actually got introduced to my ex-girlfriend at the time, or my girlfriend at the time, ex-girlfriend now, obviously, who was incredibly attractive, in my opinion, probably one of the most attractive girls at the entire school. Maybe I'm biased, whatever. But yeah, through that, it's just an interesting progression of like where I started there and then kind of going through the experience. Sophomore year, I lived at like a luxury high-end apartment, would like throw parties with my friends all the time in those apartments, which was like on this corner of campus, and everybody loved it. There was tons of students, it was awesome. And then junior year, I actually lived in like this big off-campus fraternity house where we like threw tons of parties, and there was like 30 something guys that lived there. We had a pool, like it was a crazy good time, very fun. And I just ended up in this position that was completely different from where I started, which was, you know, very exclusive, club member, well-known in the, you know, fraternity community, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of my story that I wanted to share. Not sure if you can relate. Maybe you're watching this. Maybe you want to join a fraternity. Maybe you didn't join a fraternity and you're questioning whether it was the right move, whether you should go to college in general. I don't know, but I thought it was just interesting to kind of tell that story. So if you have any questions on like how I did that, or what were the changes, maybe I can make a follow-up video that maybe I can talk about some of the reasons why I think that I went from A to B and how I was able to kind of like close the gap there. But this video is getting pretty long now, so I'm gonna cut it short. My voice is even getting a little scratchy because I've just been yapping away. But anyways, back with the frickin' one takes, telling my story, showing the journey along the way as we improve and as we continue to level up as a man in this life, running and gunning. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow your boy along the journey. Cheers.